Today's demo is going to cover using Voyager for checking the weather, for doing pre-flight planning, and then for using Voyager inside the cockpit. It's a brief demo, but it'll cover all the basics. So, without further ado, let's begin. Voyager is a very task-oriented system, meaning, what would you like to do is the first thing you see. Would you like to check the weather? Would you like to plan a flight? Get in the plane and fly? If you're an IFR pilot, would you like to organize your approach plates? Or do you just want to take a look at the FAA charts, the sectionals, the IFR charts, and such? Let's begin by checking the weather. So you simply select the weather. You can either center on a specific point, like in this case KPAE, which is my home airport, Painfield, in north of Seattle, or the entire United States, which is what we're going to do. So the first thing that Voyager 4.0 does is power up what's called the charting engine. The charting engine is a piece of code that displays charts very, very quickly. We use the same DirectX technology that Microsoft uses for Flight Simulator and that Google uses for Google Earth. And you can see that by how smooth this movement is. Notice the weather is already on the screen. While we're talking, Voyager is downloading weather information automatically in the background. You can zoom by holding down the zoom button like this. You can use a mouse wheel if you have one, or you can use the range drop down. For example, now we're at 450 nautical miles. We can move that into, say, 50, and it zooms in. You can drag it around just by using the hand and moving. You see radar echoes near a broken arrow. These are taphometer circles. So this is a VFR weather condition. The yellows are marginal VFR conditions, and this arrow here means that there's a 16-knot wind hitting basically to the south. Move and pan around. Very simple. By the way, if you forget what those symbols mean, up here in the corner is a chart legend button, which looks like this. It displays to you what all the radar echoes mean, what the winds aloft means, and so on. Let's take a look at a flight from, say, Wilmington, North Carolina, down to, or rather up to Cleveland. To do that, I can hit Plan a Flight. Now I can use a full wizard to go through and pick a lot of options, or I can just type in the idents of the airport, in this case ILM and CLE for Cleveland. Give it a routing method, whether it's Jet Airways, Victor's, or GPS Direct, or I can just tell it to add fuel stops and wind optimize. Now I won't use Victor Airways though. So I'll just say Victor Airways and click Go. At this point, Voyager is showing a quick map. Now a couple of things to point out. It looks like there's a big TFR right in the middle of our route. Notice Voyager's smart router avoids that. I also told it to avoid most MOAs, so it's working its way around the MOAs and finding my route. It locks on now. It says it's adding fuel based on price and optimizing for weather. So the chart comes up now, and this is our flight plan. I'm going to hit this button up here. This is AutoFit to zoom out automatically so I can see the whole flight. While we're talking, Voyager's been downloading weather. So here's our basic flight. We're going from Wilmington all the way up the coast, avoiding this TFR, which is in red, all the way up to Cleveland. Notice a couple of things on the screen. On this side of the screen, we have what's called the navlog. The navlog shows us our flight much as it would if you're doing it with paper and pencil. We're flying from ILM, flying through various waypoints, and then this is an airport icon. It's stopping at GVE. Well, I wonder why. I don't know anything about GVE Airport, but I do know that Voyager automatically selects fuel stops based on the best available fuel prices from 100lowlight.com. So if I select that, and if I say show information about it, Voyager pops up general information about this airport. Apparently it's Gordonsville, Muni. It's a Class E airport, and this is probably why Voyager picked it. The 100 low lead price, which is just updated in this case a couple of weeks ago, is $4.28. Notice also that you have a Google Map view here. You can move this around, zoom in, and so on. But I want to take a look. Why did it pick this one based on fuel? Well, let's see. If you click on it, since it's a blue and underlined link, just like in a web page, that means that you can just click on it. And when you do, it shows you fuel prices in the area. And as we see, this airport, Gordonsville, GVE, at $4.28, the source by price, is the lowest price in the area. In fact, by about 40 cents, so it's pretty good savings. And it has a 2,300-foot runway and so on. Now, if you were flying on instruments, you may choose to fly to maybe Culpepper Regional, which is $4.95, but 5,000-foot runway, and it has procedures. G is for GPS, L is for LD for localizer, V is for VOR, and so on. It also is showing weather, which is green, meaning it has the METAR is green, meaning it's VFR conditions. So it's a little bit smaller airport, Gordonsville, but that's why I picked it. It optimized for best fuel prices. So without having to do much of anything, Voyager automatically picked the best fuel price, and it avoided TFRs. What else did it do? Let's find out more information about this airport. I can look at the weather. It looks like this airport doesn't have its own METARs or TAFs, so it's pulling the METARs from OMH and VFR, full text here, and the closest airport that has a TAF is CHO. Incidentally, if you'd rather read this in raw text, you can just switch from translated to raw text like that. I'll switch it back to translated though. If you're an IFR pilot, it has procedures. This airport doesn't happen to have any. It has FBO information, so you know there's a restaurant about a mile away, but all in all, probably not a place if you want to have lunch that you'd really want to stop. It has runway details and other details. So all of that's available with a click. Alright, but let's talk about the weather now a little bit too. So let's move the mouse down to here. Here we have a profile view. As I move the mouse, the elevation and latitude and longitude, the current point is visible. If I put the mouse over the black line, that is an MEA, so that's Victor 70 with a 5,000 foot MEA. The yellow line is our flight plan, but look what's also on the screen, those little white dots. White dots means a scattered cloud layer. Those are dots. On the other hand, if you take the broken bars, that is a broken cloud layer. And I think over here is an overcast layer, a solid white bar. So it's overcast at 5,000 feet. Okay. Also, this bright red one, which is conveniently right near our landing stop, bright red means thunderstorm. So this might be a good case where you actually don't want to land at this particular airport, where you want to pick something else. But that's okay. Voyager gives you all the information so that you, as the pilot in command, can make those choices. Alright, so let's take a look at weather on the main screen though. I do want to find that out. So, in Voyager, selecting weather is extremely simple. You just go down to the weather button and click weather. A big menu pops up showing you roughly everything that you want to see about the weather. Now, you can add all the weather on this chart, but that probably would be visually a little bit noisy. There's a lot of airways on the screen and airspace and other things. But if you just want to look at weather, you can switch to what we call the weather theme. So let's do that. So now what we can see, let's move the timeline here. What's the timeline? The timeline down the bottom of the screen compensates, or rather explains, what weather is going to be like at different time periods. The green bar is our takeoff time, going to our landing, which we have a 1 hour fuel stop here, and then our final landing at about 7:30. So using the timeline, we can see how weather changes. So let's zoom in a little bit on this and just take a look at that. So as we're taking off, we see a lot of green dots, which is good. We also see a yellow dot, which again is marginal, and a red dot, which is IFR conditions. If we move the timeline a little bit forward, we see the aircraft move both on the profile view down below and up top on the main chart. We can move the timeline a little bit more. So notice that as we hit about, maybe 2:30 or so, what used to be a red dot over here on the coast has become green. That's not surprising, just means the weather is clearing up. I can move the chart a little bit, and I want to see what the weather is going to be like. Notice, by the way, the profile view temporarily blanked out. The reason why it does that is it's recomputing to make the bottom view match what you see on the top. So on the top, we're looking at a small section of the flight plan. It zooms into that same section on the flight plan down here on the profile view. So, as we're flying along here, it looks like at about 2:15 or so, we have a lot of marginal VFR conditions, but they're fairly far away. And let's get a little bit closer to landing. Okay, now we have a thunderstorm in the area, so again, you probably won't really want to take this flight. Let's move on a little bit, maybe midway through. We're on a final leg now, got about 2 hours left in the flight. And it looks like what weather here is now going to be green. So it looks like, although the weather was a little crummy during takeoff, it looks like it cleared up nicely by the time we landed, which is fine. And that's the whole point of using this. Now, something else. Let's zoom in a little bit more. I'll show you about winds. Pittsburgh right now is reporting a 27 knot wind. I'm going to pull up the weather key again. The yellow line instantly tells you that you're looking at a medium wind of between 21 and 59 knots. In particular, it's 27 knots. So we have a 27 knot wind as we're flying along. It looks like, according to our navlog and according to the yellow line on the profile view, we're flying at about 10,000 feet. And you can see that visually right here. So it's telling us that at this time, which is close to 7 o'clock, at 10,000 feet, the expected winds are about 27 knots. Well, let's say that you were flying a plane that could fly considerably higher. Let's see what would happen with the winds. Over here on this side of the screen, we have an altitude picker. It automatically synchronizes with the altitude of your flight, where you are at that moment. But you can move it. So I can move it up to, say, 24,000 feet. And when I do, the wind changes dramatically. Now we're at a 47 knot wind in Pittsburgh. Or if you were flying lower at, say, 3,000 feet, 14 knot wind. Voyager automatically selects altitudes to give you the best possible time to your destination based on expected winds at that time, which is a pretty unique feature of the product. Alright, so at this point we pretty much planned out our flight. All the basics are on the screen. We know what the weather looks like and so on. So let's take a look at one other thing now. One of the other neat features about this version of the product is that you have the ability to look not just at these digital charts like here, but if I go down to my chart button, if I want to see a real honest-to-goodness sectional chart, I can simply pick this one, sectional scanned. Here comes a sectional view. So now the sectional view is on the screen. What Voyager does, it works a little bit like Google Earth or Google Maps in that it automatically downloads just the pieces it needs to seamlessly create one gigantic sectional that covers the entire country. So you don't have to say, I want the Cleveland North chart or the Cleveland South chart or the Seattle North or anything like that. Simply tell it the area of the country you want and take a look. It downloads the files. So let's zoom in a little bit. Again, I can just zoom in. And as you do, it clarifies. Notice it's a lot clearer now. I'm at 9 miles. You can still move it and rotate it in. So now you can see Cleveland and see the airport. I'm going to move out just a little bit and so on. One of the neat things about this is that you can also overlay weather and other airport information on here. For example, let's take a look at that. I'm going to go here where it says radar, say show my radar, and look at that. Radar is now being overlaid directly on the Cleveland area. And if you take a look, notice it's semi-transparent. So even here, we're zoomed in very tightly. We're zoomed into 4 nautical miles. Right around the Cleveland airport, it looks like there are radar echoes just slightly north of the airport. And you can move, and you can pan, like that. Not only that, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, but Voyager's new charting engine is extraordinarily fast. You notice the ring around the side here. This ring means that we can rotate the chart. So if you want to make it look like north up, you can do that. If you are flying directly east, you can rotate the chart to see east. And notice that all the text on the screen, these are airports, complete with airport prices, are on the screen and they rotate automatically. So the point to this is that you can mix and match, I'll zoom in a little bit more, the scanned data from the FA along with all the timely digital data. So on one screen, you can overlay weather, you can overlay current fuel prices, like you don't want to land and get fuel at Cleveland at $7.33. You can overlay digital data along with the scan data at the same time and rotate it all. I can also switch my chart types. Instead of the scan chart, let's say I want to really fly that. If I want to really rotate it, I can switch to my digital chart again. And notice that all the text as I rotate, everything on the screen, I'll zoom out a little bit more. Oh, what would be a good one? Something like this. Notice the nav aid in Akron and Burke Lakefront. Everything rotates, the names of the cities, as we go. Incidentally, if you want to return to track up, or rather to north up, just double tap on this ring here, and it automatically rotates back to north. Okay? Now, the other type of chart that you may want to do is, I picked a VFR flight because I'm a VFR pilot, but if you are an IFR pilot, you can do that as well. Simply go down to the chart button again. Everything to do with a chart, whether you want to make it look different or something like that, or switch chart themes, a theme is how the chart is displayed, is controlled from the chart button. So now my current is the sectional digital. Let me just put in the IFR low digital. So it looks like a standard IFR low en route chart. Or if I really want to look like a standard chart, let's just pull up the actual chart. I'll once again hit the chart button, and this time switch to the IFR en route, and there it is. It downloads the bits as required and displays it on the screen. So let's zoom in a little on that. You can see that is indeed the true, honest-to-goodness Cleveland IFR chart. I don't know which one it is offhand, and you can move it. Notice, by the way, when you grab it and move the chart, it does get blurry for just a moment, just to make it go faster. So that's the point. So you've now planned a flight on either a sectional chart, whether it be digital or scanned, and on an IFR chart. You can move the ranges back out, and see whatever you need. So it's very, very easy to plan a flight. So now what do you do with it after you plan the flight? Well, let's take a look at that too. What a lot of people do if they don't carry a computer in the cockpit is they go to the File button and they select Print. First, I'm going to do Print Setup just to show you what's available. You can display things like a cover page, you can even put in your own graphic, a standard navigational log, very rich information about the airport, including fuel prices, FBO information, weather, approach plates, and so on. You can display charts, various types of weather information, and we'll again talk a little bit more about weather in a bit, weight and balance, and flight plan forms. And by checking or unchecking these buttons, you can make it display as much or as little as you like. You can also make it kneeboard size or full page. Kneeboard size means that it essentially uses half the paper. So you cut the paper in half and you get two pieces of paper which are just ideally sized for fitting on a standard kneeboard. Or, if you prefer, you can do it full page, which makes everything a little easier to read. So it's up to you. You can print either normally to a printer, you can do it print preview to the screen, or you can even conveniently print it to a PDF file that you can save to disk, put it on a PDA, email it to your friend, whatever you like to do. So very, very easy to do. Another thing that you may want to do with it is to send to a device or application. Meaning, let's say that you have a GPS, like say a low Garmin handheld unit or a Lowrance handheld unit. You can say send to device or application. It asks you, well, which one do you mean? Well, let's say you want to send to a Garmin GPS. It automatically detects your GPS, sends the data to it, and instead of typing in this entire navlog, your GPS is now ready to go. You can also send the flight plan to Google Earth. One of my favorite other features is something called Web Sync. There's a little button on the toolbar here that looks like a synchronize button. Because if you are, like most people, you have multiple computers, you can do things such that when you log into the system, it automatically stores for you your files on the server, which is to say your flight plans, your aircraft configuration, your pilot, and so on. So I'll type in my password. I'll say OK. And Voyager logs into our web server. It exchanges data with the system, and then when you go to your other computer, say it's a laptop or a home machine or something like that, the system automatically resynchronizes the information there. So you can plan it to work and take a look at it on a laptop computer or a tablet computer. Very easy to do. Not only is Voyager's new charting engine very powerful in terms of being able to display things two-dimensionally. Now let's zoom in a little on this. Now what you can do is, let's say that we have this particular part on the screen, and we want to see what this flight would be like from a three-dimensional point of view. Voyager's new charting engine isn't just very, very fast from a 2D point of view, but it can also do 3D highway in the sky. To do that, you simply move down to the 3D button, and you say, and click it. At this point, the system automatically recalibrates itself to 3D mode, and you can see your flight. So it looks like at this point in the flight, our next waypoint is a GVE nav 8, and you see that on the screen. You can use these controls. This is a joystick control in the middle, or top, or rather left, right, top, and bottom. I'm going to pick the joystick and just move forward a little bit, and you can fly through the boxes and take a look at what your flight would actually be like. You can also grab the ring and look around. You can see what the surrounding terrain might be like. Looks like bright red things here, which means there's a TFR to look out for. Now we're back to our flight plan. So you can look at things from both a 2D and from a 3D point of view. To use it in the cockpit, you just go back to your tasks menu, and this time instead of picking plan a flight, you pick the next choice, which is fly the flight. You can just get in the plane and fly and do nothing else, or you can preload in a flight plan. This is the flight plan that we just created. So preload that. So this is what Voyager might look like. Notice I've changed the screen dimensions of the window to simulate something more like a tablet PC that you may typically run Voyager on. This is what it would look like if you were using it inside the cockpit. So let's take a look at the map right now. So that's the map. Now of course we don't have a GPS actually hooked up. So I'm going to go to my Tools menu and pull up the GPS simulator. The simulator is pretty powerful. It lets you do things either in real time or move up to all the way 10 times normal time. For the time being though, let's just go with normal time, and I'm going to then hide this simulator but keep it running. So if you take a look at the map, there's a couple of interesting things that are on the screen. I'm going to zoom in. You have two zoom buttons on the side here, like this. All of the red, these are obstacles. The red obstacles means that they are at or below our current altitude, so we have to watch out for them. If there were any directly within our flight plan, you'll find that Voyager will actually warn you and start to blink. At the moment, it's giving you lots of information about things. course, you see the basic outline of the chart. You also can pull up airport information. This is Wilmington International. So by going to the airport info tab, I can take a look. It tells you the winds are light and variable, what the comm frequencies are, what the nav frequencies are, what the weather looks like. I can even pull up approaches. So let's take a look at one of these approaches, and there it is on the screen. Notice, by the way, that the aircraft is now superimposed. So that's where we are on the approach plate as we fly. That updates and moves automatically. You can also go to the Winds and Nearest tab. This is a very powerful exclusive Voyager feature. It's basically telling us that at this point in the flight, we definitely want to be flying fairly low at about 5,000 feet. At the 5,000 foot mark, we have a big green bar of 9 knots, which is our tailwind component. So we have a 9 knot tailwind if we fly 5,000 feet. If, on the other hand, we decide to fly at 11,000 feet, we're going to get a 5 knot headwind. Okay? So probably not quite so nice. This also tells us at every given moment during the flight what to look for. Right now we know the nearest airport, since we just took off, is at Wilmington. It's about 1.5 miles away. The weather is currently reported as green, which is to say VFR, and we have a very nice 8,000 foot runway. So in case of an emergency, of course, this would obviously be a pretty good choice. If you want fuel, it's probably not such a good choice at 646 though. You can also take a look at your nearest nav aids. So again, we know what the nearest nav aid is, which is in this case again ILM, what the frequency is, what the distance, or rather what the to and from bearings are, and so on. Well, let's just go back to our chart and see where we are. So again, as we're flying along, notice that the obstacles on the chart are no longer red. That's because we're gaining altitude. Right now, we have gauges at the top. We're moving at about 75 knots. This is a Cessna 172 during takeoff. So it's modeling takeoff performance into the winds. We know that we're currently flying at about 1,300 feet. Waypoints are over here. So it looks like our next waypoint is the ILM nav aid, which indeed is what it is. The bearing to the waypoint is 25 degrees. By the way, if you don't like to see this angle thing, right now we're in north up mode. You can make it, there's a little button down the bottom. It says track up. So now the screen rotates to track up, which is kind of handy. You can also, again, hit the 3D button and take a look at the flight from a 3D perspective. So now you literally are flying through the boxes. And back to 2D. Okay. So those are just some simple things you can do. If you prefer, though, you can also fly against the real sectionals. Just as before, we can hit the chart button and say, I want this to be my scan sectional. And now we are flying against the scan sectional. And also, as before, we can apply weather to it. I can say maybe overlay just radar and winds on the chart. Let me back out a little. By the way, you can do a couple of things. You can zoom in and out using these buttons, or click this and pick something like 50 miles. And now you can see the radar echoes and such against a scan sectional chart. I'll go back to maybe a 10-mile zoom. And look at that. And just as easily, if this were an IFR flight, I could hit this and say, show me the IFR en route, low altitude, scanned. And there they are, the IFR low altitude scan chart that we're flying against. So, very, very easily, just by using almost nothing, by switching between various tabs, you can look up information about airports, including weather, weather information in terms of winds. You can take a look at your entire nav log, gauges. These are configurable, so you can put as many different gauges on the gauge page as you like. You can even take notes. So you can say something like, I want to land at runway 16, right. Just write it on the screen. Or move back to your chart. So everything is very, very simple. Almost everything is one click away, and the buttons are big, easy to hit in flight. You can also do various split screen views. So go to the layout button. This is a layout that we call tabs, which, as the description says, each in-flight widget is on one tab, and it's especially good for portrait mode, which is to say for a tablet. I can also go with one of these split screen views. So let's go with one of those. So in the split screen view, you can see a couple of different things. In this case, we do see TAWS on the screen here. It's obviously to one side. And we can have another view here. In this case, we have a zoom which looks like it's about 86 miles on the lower screen. Then the upper screen, we have 10 miles. Now these can be completely different charts. For example, I can make my top chart by hitting the top button, an IFR digital chart. I can leave my bottom one looking like this, or I can leave make my bottom one maybe just show weather, nothing more, by hitting the weather button and say switch to the weather theme. That's a very handy way to fly. You can make one north up, one track up, and so on. So very, very easy ways of doing. In fact, in this case, I probably don't want to have TAWS on. So now I can just see what the weather is going to look like, and I can also see what my IFR chart looks like. You can also display a procedure at the same time. So you can look at your procedure and fly it. So that's our procedure relative to our current position, and see the chart all at the same time. Of course, you can see that full screen too by double-clicking. And you can use this toolbar at the top to turn all the various layers on and off. For example, that's turning on nav aids. This is turning on obstacles. This is turning on roads, and so on. So very, very easy ways to customize it. And one final thing, you can also use your XM receiver to get weather in flight. You can either Voyager automatically downloads and saves weather, or you can use the XM receiver to get real-time information updated continually as you fly. So that's a good overview of what Voyager can do for both in-flight use and for pre-flight planning. Thank you, and have a very nice day.